It is Monday on Daily Delivery. I am back from my epic driving tour of all of South Dakota, parts of western Minnesota as well, out to the Black Hills with the family. Patrick Reusse is with me here and can attest to how far that is out there, because I believe, Patrick, you've probably been there at some point in your life. If you can't grow up where you grew up and not have gone to not have done the Black Hills tour.
We're used to flat roads down there where I come from, but when you get in South Dakota, man, it's unbelievable. Straight shot for hundreds of miles. Pheasant country down there. I don't know. It's not what it used to be, but it used to be great pheasant country down there. When you first get over the border, and Aberdeen, and the Aberdeen baseball team was always traditionally called the Pheasants.
Is that right? Okay.
League. So yeah, it's a long route out there to the Black Hills, but they are very interesting. Are your kids old enough to? The oldest one might know who some of those guys are, but the rest of them are probably not too informed. Huh?
Yeah, at Mount Rushmore, she could understand. She knew who the presidents were, although she looked at the monument. This is my 9-year-old. She looked at the monument, and I think it's Roosevelt that's kind of it's kind of more in profile. And she said, "Who's the president that's kind of giving me the side eye?" And I said, "That's Theodore Roosevelt." And she calls him President Side Eye now. So that's pretty.
She already knows about the side eye.
Oh yeah, oh, she does. She does.
All right.
One of the people who was there, one of the adults that was there, overheard her and thought that was pretty funny. But yes. I'm back. I kept up as best I could with Minnesota sports while we were driving across that big state. But I think the biggest thing that's happened probably in the last week, at least as far as news goes, happened conveniently yesterday when we learned that Naz Reid has signed a 3-year, $42 million extension with the Timberwolves. Although the third of those years sounds like it's a player option, so he could opt out after 2. Patrick, we'll get to the Twins, maybe a little bit of NHL draft here in a bit, but that, I don't know if that caught me so much by surprise. I knew it was possible they could re-sign him, and certainly they wanted to keep a player of that caliber, but just as you saw that news and saw that he's going to be here for at least a couple more years, what did you think about that?
Oh, I'm a big admirer of him. He's one of those guys that, not the most naturally gifted guy, but I think somebody told me it was from over there that since they first got him, he's lost 50 pounds.
Is that right? Wow.
To make himself this athlete that he was the kind of big and slow and didn't have a lot of game. And if he ever shot the ball from 3, you were saying, no, not. And,
right.
I mean, he's, as far as a guy just making himself a better player, we haven't had many examples like this around here. It's and that's why you like to see him get his money. I saw some people saying that's too much money. Well, that's the NBA, folks. That's they were lucky to get him signed before we find out actually what the market value might have been. So they got him for 2. They had to keep him, and 2 years from now, when he can opt out, we won't. It'll be very interesting what this roster looks like, because they can't afford them all. So
no,
it'll be they can't afford Cat, Gobert, McDaniels, and
Edwards. Yeah,
they can't afford them all. So somebody will have moved, and in likelihood, to me, that still remains Cat would be the guy that would move, because you're not going to get anything for Gobert. And if Cat moves, they need Naz, right? They need him. They need that guy. So he's still young. He's still prime of his career, and a very much improved player. And he competes like crazy. Been hurt a couple of times. He goes down for a few games here and there, but. He's if you're going to run it back, as it now seems that they might, you got to have him to be part of it, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he showed how valuable he was last year, both in playing and then in his absence when he got hurt towards the end of the year last year. They really did miss him. I don't think they have the year they had last year anywhere near it. If he's not on the roster when Cat was out, he was quite good. Now, I guess the big question, like you alluded to, is he's somewhat of some Cat insurance now. If you do feel like you have to trade Towns at some point, you've at least got kind of a succession plan or someone in place who can play that starter role, and is probably a more natural four to me than Towns is, even though they both have played the 5 and the 4 here some. It seemed like his alongside Gobert, the fit with Reid seemed better at times last year, just with what he's able to do, at least offensively. I think he's got some defensive liabilities, but I think if we look at a recent parallel where the Vikings had Dalvin Cook and Alexander Mattison, and Cook got expensive and they decided they didn't want to pay him anymore. They moved on from him and kept Mattison. Feels a little bit like a similar, but not quite the same track. But does this hasten Towns' departure, or do you feel like this is, or do you feel like this is just, hey, you can never have you can't have too many good players, and you know that Towns and Gobert will probably miss some time, and even when they don't, you're going to need somebody who can fill in minutes in both of those spots.
I would say B more than that. He's you just can't, you can't go into next season without that third big man, and he's a really good one. So that's I think that's the thing. It'll be there really is not. Sounded like a month ago the big rumors going into the draft would be who's going to get, even though the trade can't be announced till July 7th,
right?
Who's going to get Karl-Anthony Towns. And I still go back to last year in the Gobert trade and the fact that we have no idea what Tim Connolly's up to. But this was a hint that perhaps he's up to, trying to, if he can't really make a good deal. Somebody, now the third is, boy, if they don't get what they want, if they don't get really quite a bit for Cat, they're not going to trade him. Well, they're not going to, there's no way they're going to get back what they gave up for Gobert.
No.
If you can get one better draft choice than you gave away here in the Cat trade, you'll be lucky, and then you're going to have to take back an expensive player too. So I don't know. I kind of like Portland as a possibility. People are talking that up a little bit. Somebody to play with Damon Lillard, but
yeah.
then you also hear that Portland just wants to get younger, and if Damon doesn't like it, tough bananas, So maybe they'll trade him. I don't know, but if they want a second star to go with a Lillard, then Cat would seem to be a pretty good choice. Maybe we already traded him. Maybe we got Scoot. Maybe we got Scoot coming.
Maybe we just don't know. Yeah. Well, because they can't trade Cat until if they were going to trade him, they can't trade him until July 7th because of the contract stipulations. And now the NBA, like the free agency period starts Friday, and then there's like a moratorium until where you can officially sign players isn't until July 6th. So it's interesting. The thing I keep coming back to, and I've brought this up to a couple different folks, is like if we think they have to trade somebody eventually, and that kind of point is coming certainly next year when Cat's contract kicks in, like we've talked about, Edwards' extension, McDaniel's extension kicks in, and now you've got Reid on the books for $14 million a year, which doesn't seem excessive to me, but it is another contract that wasn't accounted for when you were kind of doing all this math before. Like what's the ceiling of this year's team? Is it worth it to go through it all this year and see how good you are if you think you probably have to break it up anyway 12 months from now?
Yeah, that's kind of my bottom line too, is you're going to run it all back. Okay, you got a 37-year-old point guard who's now you're a regular, and I like Connolly as much as anybody, maybe going into the playoffs, but he's not going to hold up for a whole regular season. He's had injuries in the past. He's got to get time off. He can't, you can't run the show for 32 minutes a game, and there is nobody behind him. You can't even talk about bringing Jordan McLaughlin back, as horrible as he was when he played last year. He was hurt a lot too, but how do they go? How do they go get a point guard? They can't go out and buy one. They can't get one.
Right.
They got to discover one or trade for one, right? And that's so I don't I don't see you running it back. You should be better. You should be better. Go if you run it back, and Gobert's maybe got a little better idea how to play with these guys. But everybody talks about Cat has to, Cat tried to play with the guy, but as limited as he is, it's hard to figure out how to play with the guy, especially when he clogs up when he's down low, he clogs everything up. He brings players to the lane he takes a lot away from Ant, in my opinion, because Ant
Yes.
can't get the basket as much when Gobert's on the floor. So I know, everybody wants to, rip Finch and he's got to figure something out. Well, good luck to him. He's trying to figure out one of the most complicated things in NBA annals to me, trying to figure out how to get Gobert into this. Now, Gobert was better when Connolly got here, but I don't know. I think they're the way the West is going. Some of these teams are getting better. 6th, 7th place is the maximum. They might, if their maximum might be avoiding the play-in tournament and finishing 6th or something. But I don't see them winning more than 45. Do you? 45, 46, something like that.
Like I could see a little bit more. Like I could see, I think their ceiling might still be, flirting with a 4 seed, maybe, just because I don't know how good the West is going to be. But yeah, if we thought that their ceiling before last year was, maybe 50 wins and a top 4 seed, like I just didn't see it enough last year. And Cat was hurt a lot, so we don't know. And but when they played together, Cat and Gobert, wasn't good. Maybe there's room for improvement there. It's just a lot of ifs. If there, a lot of things would have to go right, and even if everything went right, I don't see this as a team that's going to be better than Denver or better than a lot of the other teams. Better than now that now that the Warriors have Chris Paul, like they're kind of gearing up for kind of another go through, another run at it. So. Yeah, that's it to me. Wouldn't you rather? It's not like it would be a wasted year to kind of go for it this year, but it just doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like this is financially sustainable to keep this roster together, and B, it doesn't feel like even if you wanted to go or were willing to go into the luxury tax, that this is the roster that you're going to go there with, because I just don't think the ceiling for this core of 3 or 4 high-paid players is good enough, especially without a point guard eventually. That's the big one, like you said.
Yeah, it's the other thing is, Finch said this a few times last year, especially late in the last season, the lack of maturity
Yes.
team, and are they going to show up against the Dogs? They're the maturity. The best sign of the maturity of this team is the way they played against bad teams. They just, okay, we
Right.
gotta get off your the privately owned plane that you fly on, go stay in your 4-star hotel, and then show up at the arena and don't give a damn and play like mutts. And they're going to have to prove to us that that's not going to be the case again.
Yeah, that is.
There is some maturity here. So, it doesn't seem like as a whole, you don't say, boy, this guy's, you got rid of Russell. That was great. He's an idiot. But that was one reason you were bad against the bad teams, because he probably wasn't interested. But it's I don't know. You don't look and say, boy, this guy's a dog. He's going to not show up tonight. But a lot of them didn't show up in those games against good teams. I think Ant's got to get way more consistent, too. It's smart. Everybody talks about it's Ant's team. It's Ant's team. Yeah, it is Ant's team.
Yeah.
And it's very erratic, because Ant is very erratic. And he gets that look in his eye when a game's on the line, and he's going to throw up a 26-foot shot and miss it. He's still a very immature player in my opinion. I love his talent.
Yes, I agree.
But he's a very immature guy, and he's part of the reason that you got an immature team. So
Yeah, and I think Cat still got maturity problems too, even after 8 seasons in the league. That's still a problem with him too. It's if your leaders are like that, and and honestly, I think Gobert is kind of immature too. You see him do things on the court, little cheap shot things. They do need, if that's kind of your core, and Jaden McDaniels obviously, punching a wall, that that's not great either. Like if that's your core, they do have to take a major step forward in, not just the outward display of emotion, but the professionalism that it takes to grind through whatever you want to call it. Like just put in a professional effort against the teams that aren't very good in the standings, because if you don't, like you said, they got beat a whole bunch of times by those teams, because even if they aren't very good, like the margins are still fairly thin. If you don't, even if you're competing at 80 to 90%, you're probably going to get beat by those teams.
yeah, there is. It's a deeper league now. The Wolves showed that last year when Luka Garza and some of those guys showed up from Iowa and played pretty good at
Yes.
times. And there's more players floating around that. I think it's a product of the fact that you never know when you're going to go in an NBA arena, and they decided not to use three of their stars. So these
Right.
other play, and I bet those teams don't always get beat. They
Right.
show up and play, and it is still a league. Everybody likes to pick on them, the NBA, for lack of effort, but it is still the league that, in an 80 game season, there's going to be 20 games when the team doesn't show up, and that's
Yeah.
and you got to reduce that number for a long. If you're not going to show up, don't show up against a team that's going to kick your butt anyway.
Right. Yeah. Right.
The Mutts and beat
Right.
them. Show up against Detroit, which is tanking.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead and get blown up by. No difference in getting blown up by 40 or losing by 6. Go ahead and just get your doors blown in if you want to in one game, but make sure you win the gimmies, so you don't get to the end of the year and you're kicking yourself. Well, we'll see where the roster winds up. I mean, outside of a trade now, that they can't really do a whole lot else aside from the extensions they need to do and things like that, because Reid is pretty much going to be that's their biggest offseason signing, just based on what we know of the salary. I mean, maybe they can do something very small to upgrade at backup point guard, but there's just not much room left for them to do anything else. So this is kind of who they are, unless there's a trade, and that wasn't good enough last year. But maybe with health, a big question mark with everybody, that will get better.
MGM Wine and Spirits is the choice for savings, service, and a great selection of spirits, premixed cocktails, wines, and of course, ice-cold beers and hard seltzers. With over 30 locations throughout the Twin Cities and beyond, there's an MGM near you. Head to mgmwineandspirits.com to find a convenient location in your area. Get social. Follow MGM on Facebook and Instagram for all the latest news and trends. Make great moments with MGM Wine and Spirits, your locally owned and operated choice for over 50 years. Save time, save money. Shop MGM.
Speaking of health and things that kind of stay the same, I thought maybe my long drive to South Dakota would shake something loose different with the Twins. I was hoping there'd be a different narrative for the Twins when I got back, but it's the same thing. I just read this morning, saw the headline in StarTribune.com. Joey Gallo, what was the headline? Twins Gallo knows he's striking out a lot, but he believes the homers will come. Isn't that pretty much the whole team? Isn't that the whole philosophy right now?
Yeah, AJ was on the game Saturday, wasn't it? Or maybe Saturday. I guess AJ was on the game, and they were just working over the Twins. Something fierce about it. If they don't hit a home run, they don't score any runs. And
yeah,
they're and how. Then I heard the Nesson guys the other day saying this team just no longer is the game has left them.
Yeah.
The way the game is being played has left the Twins, and they're still trying to beat you by hitting home runs with guys who are frankly no longer productive players. I mean, Kepler did everything he could to get released or traded, and he's still here, and
yeah,
they got confidence. And Gallo is a joke. I mean, he's gonna. if they keep playing him every game, he's going to strike out, 500. If he gets 500 plate appearances, he's going to strike out 200 times.
Yeah, it's amazing.
He's unbelievable. And if you watched over the weekend and you watched the Black Hills, you weren't, but every
Yeah.
ball they threw him, he missed by a foot. He can't hit a curveball.
No.
And that's can't hit a good fastball. So that doesn't leave much room. Even if somebody hangs a curveball, he misses it. It's unbelievable how that's the one thing. Well, not the one thing they did this offseason, but the one I could never figure out. Why do you want him? Why do you want him? He's a good athlete for a 6'7" guy, but so what? Why do you want another strikeout artist? It was just idiot. It was just, it's just, I can't figure it out. And, Rocco was, a month ago telling me, oh man, he's, how they like this competing. He's really a hard-nosed guy and all that. Yeah, but what difference does it make? He strikes out all the time. And you can't move a runner. You can't do anything when he's playing. It's just stupid. And they're striking out. They might set an all-time major league record for strikeouts, this team. And
they've got 807 in 79 games right now. I had their stats pulled up, and Gallo leading them in strikeouts, 78 strikeouts and 170 official at-bats. That's not quite half the time, but it's not far off. And he's hitting, batting average isn't everything these days, but he's hitting 182. Taylor strikes out a lot too. Man, I didn't really quite realize that. He's got 9 walks and 75 strikeouts this year, 203 at-bats.
He's a very good center fielder, and he once in a while pops up and hits a home run, but he's what's his batting average? 210,
212. Yeah, so many regulars are down there. Kepler, 207. Correa, that's still a problem, 216. Buxton, 206. Taylor, 212. Gallo, 182. Larnach, 211. Like, Willie Castro is leading the Twins in WAR among position players. 1.7. In fact, he's got more than twice. His WAR is twice as high as either Correa or Buxton. Ryan Jeffers, number 2 in WAR on the team, by the way. Royce Lewis already tied for 3rd among position players in WAR.
We have to. They have to Jeffers more and Vasquez less.
Yes.
I don't care what they think about handling pitches and stuff. Jeffers is fine behind the plate. He did a lot of work to try to improve himself. He did a lot of work to try to improve himself as a hitter, which had nothing to do with the Twins. He did it on his own. He's away from David Hopkins and the boys and did it himself in the offseason. And but here I had this thought watching yesterday's game.
Okay.
Correa, his first 3 at bats, he made 5 outs. He hit into 2 double plays. There's still a run down.
Okay.
Dick's getting all excited. They're going to tie the game, and he hits into the most routine double plays. Now he hit into 13 double plays. But if he stays if this is him for this season, they cannot be good at the play. They cannot be a competitive hitting team if this guy is going to be this rotten. Because you got Buxton, you know what you got. You got the new Sano on Buxton. That's the way he hits now. He tries to hit home runs. He's not a contact guy at all. Kepler is useless. Kirilloff has not been as good as I'd hoped. He'd had a few decent spots, but you cannot have him hitting 3 and 4 and making ungodly a number of outs and not doing anything. It's just, he's got to be a star. He can't be an out. He can't be a deficit. Yesterday he comes up, he ends up, and then he made another out. He was 0 for 4, but he scored the lead. You know how he got to second base? By making the last out in the 9th. That's how he got. That's the only way he could get to second base was by making the last out in the 9th inning. He's been terrible as a hitter. And, he's a great shortstop, but you can't be paying $200 million for track record and have him be a complete stiff at the plate, which he is. It's brutal. It's no longer, oh yeah, wait until he gets hot. You're halfway through the season, for God's sake.
It's halfway. It's 40 and they're 40 and 39. Yeah, this isn't like a small sample size anymore. This is, like you say, half the season, and they're still in first place by mercy of the AL Central's putridity. But it's, I just don't know. I'd hope there would be a new kind of evolving storyline with him. By the way, have you gotten any more mileage out of Popkins Pop Guns? Is that catching on at all?
Imagine, what are they waiting for? I mean, hey, son, you with all you knew of somebody, who once batted in the major leagues, call up Molly and say, Molly, will you forgive us for his manager and come back and be our hitting coach?
Right.
Somebody help them. It's that's the thing that drives you the craziest. There have been no consequences. They just sit there and roll with it as though things are going to be different. They run their heads at the wall, and as things are going to be different. But what's going to change? Gallo's going to strike out all the time. That's not going to change. I mean, your best hitter right now is Donovan Solano.
Yes.
Yeah, puts back ball and doesn't strike out too often. Lewis has been okay. Lewis is not Mr. Clutch for sure, but he's easy to get out too. But I saw a very good quote today in Bobby Nightingale's piece down there. Read it. It's Lewis saying they want us to wait for a pitch that we can drive, but this is the gist of it. Wait for a pitch that we can drive, but by doing that, I was 0-2 way too often. So now, so he's basically saying, I stopped listening to these idiots. That's so it is. I mean, it's disgusting. The way their approach at the plate is just disgusting, and they just keep rolling with it. They just keep sending Joey Gallo out there, and I guess I don't know. As long as Larnach, why is Larnach in St. Paul and Joey Gallo's out there striking out all the time? Why don't you just have Larnach here? He's going to strike out too, but he's young. He might get better. Joey's not getting any better.
No, he is what he is.
Yes, and it's the most prone to strikeout guy in the history of Major League Baseball. That's what he is.
I found that Lewis quote you were referring to. He said he's only in his last 7 games, he's 12 for 26, 2 homers, a double, only 3 strikeouts. He's got his average up to 333, by the way. He said, honestly, it's a mindset, talking about lowering his strikeout rate, not waiting for a pitch you can drive because these guys are going to execute. If they dot one up for you on the outer third, that's 0-1. Then they do it again, 0-2. Okay, great. Now you're 0-2. Now you're battling and you're looking for a pitch to drive at the same time. That doesn't work. I looked at where some of our plans were going and how the pitchers were pitching us, and they weren't attacking us with our plan of getting a mistake. I was like, why don't I just start being aggressive, putting the ball in play? I know I can at least touch it and go to right field. Yes, it doesn't sound like he's in for the plan, does it?
That is an indictment of the Popkins Pop Guns plan, that's for sure. So a very interesting quote that deserves some attention, because he's saying, you guys want me to sit here and wait for a ball to drive. That tells you about the whole philosophy too of we're still trying to sit there and hit home runs when that's not the game anymore. They're not playing with a golf ball anymore.
No,
they're playing with an actual baseball. So,
and you can do that sometimes against some pitchers, but you need some variance in your approach depending on who you're going against. And I think that's kind of what you're seeing this year. Like when it goes well, they can score 8 runs in the game if they got somebody they can handle, or a few guys get a hold of one. But there's just been the swings in production from 8 runs to 1 run to 6 runs to 2 runs to no runs. It's just there's been very little middle ground or consistency to them, and it's only really still the starting pitching and a couple relievers that are carrying them both for the most part.
Yeah, Thursday, of course, Buxton hit those two gigantic home runs. Correa hit one. Joe Ryan pitched a shutout,
Right.
and it was the new Twins getting ready to storm out on a road trip here after that wonderful performance. Then they went to Detroit, and they scored 3 runs, I think, in the second inning Friday, and the next 12 innings they had 1 run, a double, 4 singles, and struck out 17 times.
Yeah.
Same, I figured it out. You can't play baseball striking out more than any team in history.
No.
And this is the highest. They're going to be the first team to go over 1,600 strikeouts. No team's ever struck out 1,600.
No, they're going to do it.
I'd have to keep Joey. They're going to have to keep Joey in the lineup if they want to set that prestigious.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. They're just. I mean, I wrote a column Sunday saying, "Hey, Rocco's not the problem," but
yeah,
if he's all in on Joey Gallo playing every day, then I guess he's part of the problem. I don't know. I just don't get it. I don't
get it either.
I understand, how they wed themselves. Here, the question becomes: are these the guy? It's going to become here if this continues, because they now got Atlanta, Baltimore.
Yeah.
So who knows what the record will be when they come home, because they're good pitching they're about to face. They can't hit bad pitching in Detroit. What are they going to do with good pitching?
Right.
But the question becomes: are these the guys? Do they know what the hell they're doing?
Yeah, I know.
After the season, I mean, I've likable fellas, Falvey and Levine, and I don't think Joe Pollad's going to be the guy that storms in and fires them. But I don't know. You got to take a look at yourself here. That this is the way the game's evolving now is is just going away from the home run or not nothing philosophy, and they're still the one team trying to do it. So
you mentioned AJ. I'm supposed to have him on a show later this week. That should be fun. Maybe reminiscing about the old times, but also probably get into this year's team too.
Okay, get on him. Tell him Ricey tells him this. Okay. Sheriff Feuds. He's another guy that says, I hope they modify the shot clock for the postseason so the big ones can breathe. AJ, there was so damn much breathing in those that nobody watches anymore. The best thing about these changes is you might have a World Series game that gets over in 3 hours and 10 minutes instead of 4:25. The postseason is the number one reason to have these rules,
right?
To get the game moving. Plouffe said that too, and now I hear that. That's kind of the new narrative. We have to have these moments, breathe. Yeah, well, if they're breathing at 11 o'clock at night and everybody's in bed, what the hell good does it do you? Yeah.
You don't get to the NBA Finals and suddenly they have more than 10 seconds to shoot a free throw.
Yeah.
Or more than 24 seconds to get a shot off, and the shot clock stays the same in the NBA. It's fine.
Listen, and I might write about that this week. A couple of years ago, I used to talk regularly with Jim Cott.
Yeah.
And Jim Cott thought it was a genius. He thought the only solution was to play 7-inning games.
Yeah.
And that it was so bad. And then I had Johnny Castino earlier this year wanted the 3 balls, 3 strikes, which I kind of would have get more hitting back into the game, I think. But we were thinking of all these radical things. What can we do to speed up the game? Baseball figured it out.
Yes.
They did it with the shot. They didn't have to change the game.
Right.
They did, as it turned out, they didn't have to change the game.
Right.
And it was genius. And we never give credit to baseball for anything genius, but this is genius. And then we got old players wanting the moments to breathe. There's too damn much breathing in baseball. Let's have less breathing in baseball. We proved you could play that way. And they were talking about pitcher injuries. Well, there's a story, I think Verducci did it for Sports Illustrated. 51% of all pitchers went on the disabled list last year. Now, I don't know if that's just the guys, if they were established ones.
Sure.
So it's nothing. It's not any different this year. They're getting hurt because of the variety of the velocity they're throwing and the variety of pitches they're throwing and the maximum effort on every pitch. That's why they're getting, not because they got to throw faster. They're not throw more rapidly as far as seconds is concerned. The injuries aren't any more grievous this year than they were last year. So.
No. Really quick, Patrick, before we go, we got the NHL Draft this week. Sarah McClellan's going to join me, I believe, on Tuesday's show to talk more about that. But pretty good Gopher prospect. Could be a first-round pick, maybe even top 15, Oliver Miller. We got to find out what the Wild are going to do. Miller sounds like he's pretty good one coming in for Motzko.
And Cooley stayed. Cooley was third or fourth overall and a great player. And then he's got another one coming in from Boston, took away from all the Boston teams, who's supposed to be, he's as highly rated as Cooley and is more highly rated than Moore, but I think that's for next year.
Okay.
But he's a Boston kid, and you got BU and BC and all the Eastern schools just panting for this kid. I can't remember what his name is now, but he was telling me about him, that he might be the first overall draft choice next year, apparently, and he might end up coming here. So,
wow.
He's supposed to come here. He can't sign yet, but he's verbally committed to come here. They are killing it recruiting wise. And now all they got to do is show up for the third period.
Yeah.
Championship game. I saw that the Quinnipiac, I was flipping channels yesterday about 5:00, and the Quinnipiac Gopher game was being replayed at 5:30 on ESPNU. I bet that didn't have a very good rating.
No.
Especially in the later stages of it. It did not. Still don't know what happened then, but they are loaded with talent, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's funny you mentioned that, because when we were on our trip, there was one of the restaurants we were eating at. It was like more of a bar restaurant kind of place, and they had a bunch of TVs on, and they were for some reason, I guess this time of year there's not much programming. They were replaying the Wild Dallas Game 4, and it was Wild was up 2-1 in the series. I was like, man, those were optimistic times. Those were the good old days.
Tom Reid was wondering how late in the spring he should keep his added staff on.
Turns out it was mid to late April.
I said to him before Game 4, I ran into him. I said, "You gotta kind of hope they lose tonight, so you can extend it, so you can get extra. Then you get the." You don't want them to win it in 5, then you don't get the Game 6. He says, I'll take this one and win it and give up Game 6 for the next series.
Right.
So he was, and just think of how much money those stiffs cost the boys on West 7th by choking the last 3 games. What are we gonna do? What's their narrative on the Russian now? Does he not show up when the game season's on the line? But he get 1 goal in the series?
Yeah, well, the thing is, he'd been really good in the postseason last year, the previous year, and I think pretty good in the time before. So I don't know what to make of it. I still think I don't know if he was hurt last year or something. I mean, he came back from that injury late in the year. Although you see a lot of guys in the NHL just step right back in. So I don't know if that's as much of a factor in that league or not. I don't think it's a narrative until it happens again. Let's put it that way. If he does it again this year,
changed when he came down on the power play and didn't score, and then about a half minute later, the net wide open in Game 4. He had a wide open net and he missed it, and they, I think the game was tied then, and wide opening net, and Dallas ended up winning that game, and it was all over. It was all. So I got a lot of Minnesota kids in the NHL draft, and there's the hockey crowd is certainly interested in it. But I can't sit there and watch an NHL draft when I don't know who 93% of the players. But then again, I didn't know 93% of the players in the NBA draft this year either. Once we got past the big Frenchman, that had to be the most boring draft in the history of the NBA. Who the hell were this collection of nobodies? It was a waste of time, that draft, as far as who are these people. But we love. But the other thing, I think, just to expand on that point one bit, I don't think this G League is doing much for building up players for the NBA draft. I mean, you're already missing a lot of college players, right? You don't have the college players who I got to go see. I wonder where he's going to go. And now you're getting G Leaguers that are going ahead of the college players.
Yeah.
And we don't know anything about G Leaguers because nobody in history has ever watched a G League game on television. Their rating is, first of all, there's 200 people in the stands if they're lucky. And B, their national TV rating is like 0.01, you know? So, no, we don't know who the hell he's in. Scoot. No. We got to get Scoot. Well, the only way we know Scoot is if you watch the 1 minute video. You don't know if he can play. So.
It's all highlight videos these days. Well, highlights of this show were many. Patrick will do it again next Monday. Appreciate it as always. Be well, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, Mike.